Hi, and welcome back to On the Sunny Side. I'm Sunny Grineveld, and every week I speak to entrepreneurs, business leaders, and researchers, people who are shaping the digital economy and who are using tech for good. Now, this week, I'm incredibly excited to welcome Kris Paasila to the show. He's the CEO and founder of Inside Labs. Kris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, for those who tune in regularly, and for those who don't, I hope you click the subscribe button. But for those who tune in regularly, they know I always start with something I call Sunny's Fast Five. Five quick questions to get to know you quickly, but hopefully also originally, so we know who you are and what moves you. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right. So, are you a morning or a night person?
Definitely a morning person.
And if I were to give you a time machine and you could travel to any place and any time you wanted to, where would you go?
That's a great question. I reckon probably either the 20s or the 60s. Both were kind of times of change, and both, I think, eras that would have been really, really fun to experience and kind of see what went on and what were the drivers of change behind that.
Hmm. Traveling back to the present, what is a question that's top of mind for you right now?
Uh, I think today it's about how my customers are gonna do over the next kind of 2 to 3 weeks. We work in the ski resort space currently in Switzerland. Important decisions are being made as we speak about how resorts are going to be allowed to open this coming winter break. So I think that's on top of my mind. So exciting times in these unprecedented times.
And sort of looking over your life, what is success to you?
I think it boils down to impact and having impact. And I mean, impact can be small, making one person's life a lot better, or making a lot of people's lives a little bit better. But I think that's a really neat way to measure success, especially, of course, if impact is for the better, which we hope it is. It's more relevant than maybe monetary success or fame or the amount of people that you employ, because impact kind of summarizes all of those factors. If you want to get rich, then that has an impact on how you spend your time, what you do. If you want to make the world a better place, then impact is certainly a great metric. So I think it's a nice way to summarize it in terms of impact and having impact.
Inside Labs, you mentioned you're in the ski resort space. What does Inside Labs do for those who don't know it?
So we built digital experience platforms. So we really try to help destinations in the tourism space, anything from a big hotel to a large city, kind of create their customer journey of the dreams. So combining the information that a guest needs with the products that he or she can consume and book. And at the end of the day, then also rewarding and loyalizing them through communication and kind of data-driven marketing. So we try to bring that together, and we primarily do that within the ski resort space today, working with some of the big clients like Laax or Zermatt or Lenzerheide in the Swiss Alps.
Let's zoom in on Laax because this has been such a tremendous success case and in many ways such a pioneer project for Switzerland. You've received a lot of accolades and awards for it. But let's sort of step back to the beginning. And when you started, it wasn't yet as known of an idea even to really rethink the guest experience digitally for resorts. What were these first steps like, and how did you get started in Lux, which I believe was sort of your first project of several?
It had a lot of characteristic of both entrepreneurship, kind of this spin out character, isolating a small team, giving them a lot of freedom. But really at the beginning was the notion that we knew there was data that we were not using well, and there was kind of these customer experiences that were not being aided through technology the way they should be. And when we really looked around the market at what kind of software solutions existed in solving our problem, which was to get to know customers and communicate with them, help them enjoy their stay more, we realized that there was very little solutions that actually helped us do that. So we decided we're going to have to build something ourselves. And at the time, I was lucky enough to be advised by a guy called Nick Muldoon. He was an agile coach at Twitter. And he said, Kris, just hire a couple of guys, start working on the problem. If in a year's time you're not seeing a difference for the better, then quit and do something else. And that's how we really started.
And this decision make versus buy, I think so many people who are involved in digital projects in one way or another face it. How did you think about it?
So I think the clue was in the fact that we kind of looked at the market, we looked at the existing solutions, and we realized that it wasn't there. But there's also degrees of it being there or not being there. I mean, we realized that we're going to have to integrate different systems. We looked at some of the systems that we were using to run a ski resort at the time, and we said these are not future proof. So we're going to change these, and then we're going to build on top of them. So it was kind of clear for us that we had to make something of our own because it didn't exist in that form for us to buy. But at the same time, we also looked at critically at what kind of systems we were running, and then also chose to re-examine those over the years. And we actually changed the ticketing system, which is pretty huge for a ski resort. And a couple of years ago, we changed the system that runs the restaurants in order to enable things like ordering via the app directly from the restaurants and not having to queue and wait for your food to come. So these types of things were kind of the monumental changes that happened as we progressed. In the beginning, we didn't say we want to change everything or we want to integrate everything. We said we're going to build something small that makes better customer experiences. And then as we went and learned, we were able to actually make more out of it and also bring more change forth through that approach.
I mean, if I think of ski resorts, traditionally, I sort of think of slightly more conservative, traditional places with a good amount of conservative and traditional people who run them. But in your case, you managed to convince all the stakeholders lastingly to really make a very sustainable change happen for Laax. What do you think were sort of some of the key factors that convinced people to really buy into that vision? Because you had so many different stakeholders who needed to be part of this in order to even make it a success. So what was the secret sauce, or what's your advice also for others who are trying to convince a lot of different stakeholders to make digital projects succeed?
Sure. I think what really helped us was that we had Reto Gortner, who's a visionary in his own right, and the CEO and president of the board behind the company that runs Laax, as kind of our head figure and real visionary. He wanted that change badly. So of course, if you have one of those handy and you can have someone who has influence, use them, let them help you bring forth that change. But I think beyond that, it was really about starting small there as well. So when we started looking at digitalizing the experience in some of the restaurants, for example, we picked 2 or 3 out of the 30 or so that were there. And we didn't say we're going to start a project that's going to aim at improving the customer experience in every single one of those. We said we're going to pick 2 or 3 and we're going to test a couple of things with those. So kind of building a coalition of the willing. And then once we were able to show that it actually brought improvement and it brought new customer experiences that both worked for the restaurant, but also for the customers, then we were able to position that in a way that more restaurants would jump on and find this a nice way to go, and thereby overcome the initial resistance that often projects like this face.
Being at this intersection between physical experiences and ski resorts having a lot of knowledge and people who are very competent at creating great physical experiences, what is sort of the difference to being really good and successful at creating amazing digital experiences? Like, what are sort of some of the key differences, and then also the success factors that you need to get right to really make the digital experience piece as awesome as many places today offer physical experiences?
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, I think especially in an industry like tourism, many of the movers and shakers in tourism are really builders. They built things. They built these monuments, restaurants on top of mountains. They built lifts that cost 20, 40, 100, 230 million for the new lift in Jungfraubahn. So they are very, very much driven by these big projects. and spending a lot of money up front, making huge investments, and then reaping the benefits of that for years to come. Fundamentally, digital projects work a little bit differently. They're still experimental. There's a large component to them, which is actually the operation, making the technology work for you, putting in the hours to test, get to know your customer base, how they react to what you are doing, how can you deliver more value, optimizing, and so on. So it's really that, I think, was a major factor in first of us realizing that, and then being very, very open and effective in communicating that we have to change our mindset, because the digital projects that had previously been done is, let's do a new website, or let's implement this new system. So they were very, very similar. They had large upfront costs, and then they were kind of shelved. It's done. Let's reap the benefits. And I think fundamentally, if you want to make digital customer relationships, great digital customer relationships, a core part of your strategy, then you have to be willing to invest into it over time and constantly improve from quarter to quarter, season to season, even day to day.
In 2020, especially through COVID, there has been even more need to really drive change in tourism. What is your vision for that industry? And do you think, every ski resort will end up having a digital experience, or every tourist destination? Like, how do you imagine the tourism industry evolve in the next years?
So I think there's two layers here. I think there's a more kind of a global layer that's going to change with Corona as well. We're definitely going to see a little bit of a going back from this. Everything is available at moment's notice. I can fly anywhere in the world and have the experience. I don't need to worry about booking anything. It's all there. That's going to last for another year or two. I think after that, there will be a cleansing of sorts. I mean, I think it's going to be really, really tough for a lot of international players to maintain. Some of the big cities in Europe that are used to these giant influx of tourists. So I think there's going to be dramatic changes on that level. I think for us in the ski resort and alpine space, change is also on its way. I think digital is here to stay. I think it's going to be something that guests expect now more than ever. It's going to accelerate the kind of transformation that is happening by 2 or 3 years. The Uber-like experiences of getting around, the experience of dining, be it reserving your table, ordering food to the apartment you've rented, all those things will be expectations that guests have during their stay as well. And it won't be good enough to say, oh, but we're in the Swiss Alps, it works differently here. So I think there's something about change expectations through that. I mean, for me, it's really about eliminating pain points, especially in the skiing experience. I love snowboarding and skiing. It's a passion of mine. And I mean, let's be honest, it can be a bit of a pain. You have a lot of gear to haul around. You don't know how busy it's going to be. You don't know what the weather is going to be. So everything that we kind of change along that to make your stay more comfortable, no matter what the conditions, because of course we can't change the amount of snow or how the weather is, I see as a plus. And to do that, we need better tools for resorts to manage the experience their guests are having. And I think that's where we would really like to make a difference, and where we've shown that in Laax it is possible, and actually how a resort can work better in times of Corona, for example, as well.
In closing, two practical tips that I'd love to get from you. Number one, what are books or podcasts, resources that help you think more profoundly or more nuanced about the digital world?
That's a great question. I think a book that shaped me early on was Richard Branson's autobiography, Losing My Virginity. I thought it was a great tale. I mean, it's really how one man can envision a future that is actually different. I also like that he was able to do that across different industries. I think it's something that the current kind of Silicon Valley mentality with focus, sometimes hinders you at thinking that big. So I think as a general read to entrepreneurship, that's a good one.
Totally can second that recommendation, by the way. It's one of my favorites as well. In the early days, I read it as a teenager, and I absolutely agree. I think it's really one of the great autobiographies out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, it's also just a good tale because it also includes some fun, some hedonism, those things that really make working and living worth it, right?
Right on.
Maybe for the German speakers, more recently, Christopher Käse wrote a book called Silicon Valley that I think is a good one, just to open the eyes of the readers in terms of what's different in the kind of American and European way of looking at data, what's going on with change. It has great examples, so it might be a little bit outdated already. Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple of more, but those are the two that come off the top of my head.
Final piece of advice: if you could go back to those early days of standing in front of this huge project of creating a digital customer experience for Laax and pioneering what it means to have a great customer experience as a ski resort, what is sort of some of the advice you wished you would have heard upon that, first few days and weeks of starting that project, which you have, since learned along the way? Like what are sort of some of those lessons that you would like to tell your younger self?
Also very, very tough. I mean, I think it's just to keep going. I mean, we've been lucky in that we've had by far more successes than big failures. But I think it's about the tenacity to stick with it and go through the small things and really make sure that people are with you on this journey. We realized that some of the hardest products to create digitally were some of the simplest, because there's a human there who has to make sure that it works. And unless they're motivated and understand why they're doing what they're doing, ultimately they're not going to help you on your mission. So I think that's part of it. So recognizing the smallest cogs in the machine and making sure that they feel supported when it's really critical. And then I would also say, don't take it too seriously. I mean, take it seriously, but also just have fun while you're doing it, because it's a great experience and a great ride.
Kris, thank you so much for this wonderful tour d'horizon along what it means to digitize a ski resort. It's been a huge pleasure. So thank you just so much for joining me on the sunny side.
Thank you, Sunny. It's been a pleasure to be here, and all the best.
Thank you. Here we are going to come to a close, but we'll be back in a week's time, and I hope to see you again next Friday on the F15 YouTube channel. Please do subscribe, and see you soon on the sunny side.